Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We're now going to continue our lessons on the soul. And today we're going to discuss reincarnation, which is one of the soul facts that Krishna presents to us in Bhagavad Gita. We are studying a chunk of verses from chapter 2, which discusses Jiv Tattva, the truth of the soul. And this is the first teaching that Krishna shares with us. So, in this chunk of verses from 2:12 to 2:13, there are two verses that specifically explains or states that the soul goes through reincarnation. And we're going to read those verses. They're very famous verses and they're also good to know. 2:13. Dehi nosmin yatha dehi kamaram javanam jara tatha dihantara praptir dirastatra namuyate. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So we can witness that the body of everybody we know and our own body goes through changes. First is the infant stage, then it's the childhood, then it's youth, adulthood, mature adulthood, old age. And then at death, we can see that the soul has left the body, because we discussed last time that if you ever had a chance to see a dead body, it's clear, it's just a shell that the person has left. So when the soul leaves the body, it's just a shell of that person as we used to know him or her. So all this we can witness, but what we don't see with our eyes is how the soul, after having left one body, takes on a new body. So this we don't see. We just see part of the wheel as it comes here, but we don't see the completion of the wheel as it starts again in a new body. In verse 22, 2:22, Krishna describes us like this. Listen, he paints up a very clear picture. I like this one very much. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So we all change clothes, and sometimes we throw away our old clothes. When they are dirty, they're too stained, we cannot use them anymore, they may be torn, just too worn out, or maybe we have grown out of them. Then we throw away these clothes because we cannot use them again. Similarly, when our bodies, which are also like clothes, it's like a meat coat on the soul, and that meat coat becomes too dirty, too polluted, or too torn, or too old and worn out, the soul leaves that body and takes on a new one. So Krishna compares this to changing of clothes. In chapter 15, Krishna will explain a little more the technicalities of reincarnation, more in detail. Now let's find out a little bit more how this change of body occurs. So we're going to read from chapter 15, a few verses, text 8 till text 11. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aroma. Thus he takes on one kind of body and again quits it to take another. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. So what does it mean that the spirit carries different conceptions from one life to the next? To understand this, we have to know that there are three types of bodies that we all have. And this is common knowledge in yoga and Ayurveda philosophy and in the Vedic philosophy. And don't get confused. I say three bodies. Sometimes they talk about 5 bodies, like 5 koshas, 5 different layers of the consciousness, or 5 or 7 chakra bodies. So they can be subdivided a little bit different, but there are 3 main categories of bodies. So first we have the gross body, the physical body, the meat coat. So it's pretty clear what that is. Then we have the subtle body. The subtle body consists of the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. So the mind, intelligence, and false ego, this is the subtle body. This is like the aura body. People who see aura will call it the aura body. So in the mind is stored, for example, our desires, our mentality, our memories, our intelligence and intellect, of course, and also the false ego means to the degree which we are under illusion, as we mistake the material body and the material circumstances in our life for being our true identity. So the subtle body, it's quite complex. Then we have the spirit body, and the spirit body is the soul, is the jiva, and the soul never changes. The soul consists of Sat, Chit, Ananda. It is eternal, it's full of knowledge, and it's full of bliss. The soul body never changes, but it is temporarily covered by a subtle body and a gross body. So when I say temporarily, I mean for us who are conditioned and who are here in samsara, in the cycle of birth and death, this is covered because we are in illusion about our true identity. So when we change bodies at death, we leave the gross body behind, and the soul leaves the gross body, and it carries the subtle body. So it carries the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. It carries all the memories. It carries the desires. So, and Krishna explains this very nicely. He says, like the air carries aroma, the soul carries different conceptions of life. Conceptions of life means different mindsets. It carries the subtle body. So the air, it's quite mystical element because we cannot see it, but we can perceive it in so many ways. We see how the air maybe stirs up waves on the ocean. We can feel when a wind or a breeze is touching us, we feel it on our skin. We can see leaves flying in the air when it's stormy outside. We can see the air with full force, say in an orkan, just lift houses and cars, make objects fly. So though we don't see the air, we perceive the effect of the air. Well, in the same way, actually, we discussed last time from the teachings from Mundaka Upanishad, how the soul floats on 5 kinds of airs in the heart center, in the heart chakra. And when the soul leaves the body, it's the air that carries the soul through one of the holes in the body. And this is the way when we say the person has died, this is how the soul leaves the body, from one of the holes of the body. So it's the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the genitals, or the anus. Sometimes for mystical yogis, they can actually pierce the crown chakra and they can leave the body through the crown chakra. But this is quite unusual. So, but anyhow, that yogi has learned how to master the air within the body, and that way it can forcefully pierce the crown chakra. So the air actually takes the soul and the subtle body to its next destination. More details what happens in the gap between we leave one subtle body and we take birth again, or conception occurs in another womb. We can get more information on that from, for example, Garuda Purana. It's not an immediate process. Actually, the soul and the subtle body has to go through a few things before it takes birth again. But this is not discussed further in detail in Bhagavad Gita. So why is it, if all our memories are stored in the subtle body, we cannot remember our past lives? This is a very valid question. Krishna says to Arjuna in chapter 4, verse 5, I will read, the personality of God had said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of enemy. Subduer of enemy is Arjuna. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear every millennium in my original transcendental form. So Krishna says when he appears in the material world, he can remember everything from all the times he has appeared here, in whether he comes as Bhagavan Swayam, Sri Krishna, his original form, or if he comes with another mission in an avatar form. He remembers everything because he is absolute. First of all, he's the supreme soul, so he's an unlimited. He's unlimited, which we are not. We are the Jiva, the Jiv Tattvas. We are not unlimited. We are minute. So Krishna has obviously much more potency to remember the things, but all our memories is also stored in the subtle body, but we cannot perceive them. Why is that? It's because each and every time we take a new body, we identify very, very strongly with that body and with that situation we're born into. This is the illusion. This is Maya. So Krishna tells Arjuna that whenever he appears, he remembers everything. He remembers everything from all his appearances in the material world, whether he comes as Sri Krishna, his original form, Sri Krishna, or if he comes in some avatar form with a specific mission, he remembers everything. But Arjuna, who is an ordinary soul, means he's not so ordinary, he's an associate of the Lord, but he's a Jiv Tattva. He's an individual soul, just like we are. He cannot remember. And this is because we are under illusion. When we come down, when we chose to come down to the cycle of birth and death, to samsara, we are trying to act God. So each life we are trying to become the supreme somehow. And that means we identify very, very strongly with that set of body and those circumstances. So we are actually not meant to remember from one lifetime to another lifetime. Though some people do remember, it is not unusual that children, for example, do remember something from the previous life, especially if they had an untimely death. They're still processing it. And if you want to check on YouTube, there are so many good and very interesting documentaries about this. When children, they start to get these memories, and they can even say to great details who they were in their past life, how they died, etc. And it becomes so, they become so convincing that the parents feel they cannot ignore this anymore, because the children kind of live in a parallel life. So they start to investigate, and they find exactly that person. And sometimes the children can give details also, secret details where things are hidden, and sometimes even how they died and things like that. And they have found old relatives. So I advise you to check out. There are many of these documentaries, and it's very interesting. But this is out of the ordinary, though it happens quite a lot. The normal is that we don't remember, because it's too overwhelming to remember actually. It can be very confusing and very overwhelming to remember, because we are so, we are identifying ourselves so much with each life. This is our disease. We don't identify as a soul, we identify as that body, as that name, as that circumstance where we're living in. So, though actually in our subtle bodies, all the memories are there, we cannot access them. And Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he gave a very good explanation in his Bhakti Shastri course that I would like to share with you. He says that our memories to a large extent are connected with the body. So the body is like a reference point for our memories. So the memories are stored in our minds, and we bring the mind with us when we change bodies, when we transmigrate from one body to another. However, since we have changed body, the point of reference is gone, and it's very hard to access those memories. So he compares this to looking for a file in a huge computer when we have forgotten the file name and even the location of that file. So I thought that was a very nice way of explaining this. And even in this lifetime, we know that our memories are very fallible. Mostly we don't even remember what we had for breakfast a few days back. So leave alone remembering from another lifetime. But if we would remember, it would be very exhausting, and it would be very overwhelming for us to actually remember past lives. And when I say to actually remember, I mean actually to remember. I don't mean that we go to somebody who says, oh, you were a princess in Egypt, or you were this or that. You know, that we can take as a good story, and we can think, yeah, maybe I was. I think it makes sense because I feel like this or that. But to actually remember, it can be super overwhelming, more than we can actually handle sometimes. I remember I was watching a documentary, this is many years back. There was one hypnotherapist, maybe he was also a psychologist and scientist, but he started to research people. This was adults who claimed to remember past lives. So there was one lady, I remember, this is a documentary from the 70s. One lady, she was from Australia, but she remembered a life in France. And she accessed those memories more and more through the hypnotherapy. And then the hypnotherapist, this researcher, he actually decided to bring her to France. So they have filmed while they're going to, I think it was a castle. It was like a huge old villa where she used to live. And they're filming on the roads. One guy's driving, you know, you just see trees, and then you start to see something. We just hear the lady, and honestly, the fear in her voice, the panic of not being able to handle what she saw. She was like, oh my God, that's the tower, oh my God, that's the tower. She just freaked out. And it was not like something bad had happened at that tower. It was not like she had, you know, died from a fall from the tower. It was just being so overwhelmed from seeing something from another life. It gets too much for the mind because we are so much attached to our present identity. So yeah, it made a huge impression on me. Just the fear in her voice when she reacted to seeing a building that she had seen from a previous life. So what determines our next body? Krishna said in these verses, let me go back and check. He says in 59, he says, the living entity does take on another gross body and obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So the mind means which mentality we have cultivated, really to a large extent determines what type of body we will get, which species. Will we be born in an animal body or in a human body? So what determines is our mentality and also our karma, our deeds. But it's not only karma, it's also our mentality. and also how much we have progressed spiritually, obviously, because we bring our minds. So the mind is like the center of our senses. So it's also very important having the knowledge about karma and reincarnation mentality. And we should not judge people. Like a very immature way of understanding this knowledge or of using this knowledge would be that, oh, you are suffering, so you're a bad person. Really? This one lifetime is only one chapter in the book of our lives. So this chapter may be a very challenging one when we may get results and also a lot of opportunity for growth, because anytime there is suffering, there's also a lot of opportunity for growth. So some person has a tougher life than another person. We should not judge them just because we believe in karma that they are bad persons. They're going through a period when they're getting reactions from their bad karma. That is true. But we all have mountains of good and bad karma that is unmanifest. And if you want to know more about karma and how it manifests, you should read Srila Jiva Goswami's The Nectar of Devotion. It explains very nicely how karma can be manifest, unmanifest, and how it works. So this is important. Whenever we get knowledge, it's a great responsibility that we don't misuse the knowledge to control and push down other people. Knowledge is meant that we can be uplifted. So when we know about karma, when we know about spiritual process, we also have a tool how to change our futures for the better. And this should be our focus. To help each other and to encourage each other to aim for a better future, to do better deeds, to continue with the spiritual process that we can reach the goal of human life, self-realization, God-realization. This, the knowledge that Krishna shares in Bhagavad Gita should be used for, and should not be misused to oppress and suppress other living entities. It's a very important point, actually. So in many of the main world religions, there has been knowledge about reincarnation, or at least some groups have had this knowledge, and then, it has been kicked out. And I will share something on a very serious note that I also learned from Chaitanya Charan's Bhakti Shastri course, but obviously I have already thought about it. But when the concept of reincarnation is kicked out from a religion, there are some very, very difficult issues to deal with. Logical flaws, but they're more than logical flaws, they're emotionally and spiritually very difficult issues to deal with. First, it is the inequity of everybody's experience. Like we were discussing, one person suffers a lot, might be deceased, while another person is very healthy, strong. Another person is very poor, the other person is rich. One person has no friends, another person has a lot of friends. One person is not intelligent, the other person is super intelligent. If we don't have the knowledge about karma and reincarnation, it looks like God is completely arbitrary. And that may be a hard pill to swallow. Why would God do like that? Why would He give us so many different unequal experiences? If we know that each life is just a chapter in our larger book, in the larger book of our life, we can understand it the way it should be understood. But an arbitrary God may be too repulsing for people to accept, so they may turn to atheism instead and say that things just happen by chance. So if we don't have the knowledge and understanding about karma and reincarnation, we have two options. Either we think that God is arbitrary, or we think that everything is happening by chance. And both views are very debilitating. Also, if we are left with the idea that there's only one life which leads either to hell, eternal hell, or eternal heaven, it's hard to see the mercy and the kindness of God, because we all make mistakes. Maybe to different levels, but We all know that we make mistakes. We are fallible. Humans are fallible. So should there be no forgiveness for our mistakes? So it raises a serious question about God's kindness. And the result may be that people who would be inclined towards approaching God instead turn to atheism. Because it's something we feel intuitively, that God is love, Krishna is love, and not mean that there are consequences sometimes we have to deal with, but God is a loving God. Krishna comes in incarnation after incarnation, avatar form after avatar form. Just please now, come back home, come. He's giving us so many chances, not only a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, a fifth chance, 1,000 chances. He never gives up on us. And this is a very important quality of God, because God is love. And I think in all mature understandings of religion, regardless of which religion we belong to or we practice in, that must be the essence, that God is full of love. It's not a logical conclusion, but it's also a realization. So, and I have actually talked to, when I studied in the university, religion, there were also these students, they studied Christian theology, they were about to become priests. So I talked to one girl and I actually asked her, but how is it for you? Like when you see neighbors and friends that you like and maybe even love, and you see they're not Christians, and if you don't preach to them, if you don't convert them, they will burn in hell forever. How is it? Is it not super heavy? And she says, I think God is much more greater than that. God is greater than that. That's the answer she gave me. She was studying to become a priest. So obviously she has done a lot of prayer, she has done a lot of glorification of God in her life. So she has the realization that God is supreme kindness, even though the philosophy of how her religion is presented does not explain this into detail. She intuitively feels God is greater than that. God is mercy, God is kindness. Another girl I was talking to, she was also Christian. She said that she had met some people that she knew. This is not the first time they meet. She just felt they have connections from previous lifetimes. And she said, I don't believe it, but I know it's true. But I don't believe it, but I know it. So she felt it so strongly. This is on the level of a realization that this is not the first time I meet this person. But her religion does not explain about this, but still she intuitively feels it. So when a religion does not have a proper intact philosophy, it can be very hard on the practitioners. What is good though, and I don't mean to, now I talked about two Christians, I don't mean to pinpoint any religions. Every religion has people who are realized, people who are following it nicely, and they have fanatics in them, also in my religion. So that is not the point, but the point is that some of these things become a really hard burden on the practitioner if the theology is not intact. And I want to say that this is why I am following the Bhagavad Gita, for example, because it is intact. However, it is not the philosophy, the theology that makes us realize God, is how we act. So there's a chance in every religion that we can approach God if we are sincere and if we follow a sincere spiritual method. For example, prayers, meditation, contemplation, selfless work, glorification of God, etc. So I hope you got some further inspiration to dive into the Bhagavad Gita. Please go back and read these verses about the soul, about reincarnation, and stay tuned. Next lesson, we're going to talk about the individual soul and the super soul. It's also very important. And then coming lessons, we're going to discuss on how to act on the level of the soul. And lastly, the last lesson, mini lesson, would be on how can we prove the existence of the soul. So stay tuned and hopefully see you soon.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.